This tutorial is focused on creating a customer, or what we call an ingress trunk. We will cover the technical steps for adding network information, rate deck information, and routing information. In this tutorial, we assume the carrier account, which is the accounting portion of the account, has already been created. We also assume that rate deck and routing plans have been created. We cover the creation of those items in other tutorials. So let's begin. As you can see, we are on the Trunks page, which I reached by going to Routing and Trunks from the main navigation. The system defaults to Egress or Vendor Trunks, so I must click on Ingress Trunk in order to reach the customer accounts. As you can see, there are some other Ingress accounts that have already been added. Let's start by creating a new trunk by clicking on the Create New button. This is the Ingress Trunk creation page. We will add all of the relevant technical information for this customer on this page. First, I will start with a short explanation of each item. Ingress name is the name of the customer Ingress trunk. I would highly suggest using a standard naming convention, using words such as customer or inbound in the name as a way to easily recognize what the trunk is. Carriers is the accounting name for this account. It is possible for one carrier account to have multiple trunks attached to it. Type is always set to Class 4. Media type is always set to Bypass Media, meaning that media will not pass through this switch. Minimum profitability is the minimum profit percentage you are willing to accept for this customer. Call limit is the number of ports available. CPS limit is the calls per second allowed. Protocol is set to SIP or H323. This switch is capable of using either one. PDD timeout is calculated in milliseconds. In this case, it's 60,000, which would be 60 seconds. Ignore early media is a specific setting used for special interconnection scenarios. Active turns the trunk on or off. T38 is the faxing protocol, which can be activated or not. Dipping rate. This is if you were to charge your customer to dip or perform an LRN lookup on a call. RFC 2833 is related to DTMF. User dipping relates to the source of the LRN lookup. In this case, it is using the local Fusion LRN servers. Minimum duration is for forcing or keeping up a call for a minimum number of seconds. Ignore early no SDP is another specific interconnection setting. Ring timer relates to the time allowed for a call to remain in ringing state before the switch shuts down the call. Maximum duration relates to the maximum time in seconds any call is allowed to stay up for. At the top on the right hand side, bill by. This is normally set to follow rate deck, which tells the switch to look up the rate using the rate deck to find the cost of the call. Rate profile is a developmental tool which you can ignore. Rounding decimal places and rounding relates to how many decimal places you are rounding your billing rates. Finally, we have codecs. While the Fusion switch does not transcode, you can set limits to the certain codes available in your calls. One moment while I quickly add the information to the trunk. I have added the trunk information, and now you can see the information has been populated into the fields. Sample ABC Customer is the name of the trunk as well as the carrier account name. I will only allow the switch to complete calls that give me a minimum of 15% or more of profit. I have given this customer 250 ports at 10 calls per second. I have enabled T38 faxing. I have set the maximum duration to 14,400 seconds or 4 hours. I have set the rate deck rounding to 4 decimals. And finally, I have restricted the customer to using only G711 ULAW and G729 codecs. Now let's add IP address information and rate deck information. Okay, I am still on the Ingress trunks, but I have moved to the bottom of the page now. Here we will add IP address information, attach a customer rate deck, attach a route plan, and assign a tech prefix. As you can see, I have added an IP address for this particular customer by clicking on the Add Host button. You can add IP address information singularly. You can do it using the subnet mask if you have multiple IPs, and you can set the port that you would like to use. This switch will default to port 5060 unless you put a value in here. Now we want to attach a rate deck. Click on the button. I will click on the drop down to add my customer rate deck, which is sample customer deck. I will come over to my route plan, which I have already set up, called primary retail LCR, and I will add a tech prefix. Tech prefix is not required, it just depends on your specific setup with your customer. For my purposes, I will set up a prefix 553, and once I'm satisfied with the information I have provided in this trunk, I click on Submit to add this particular trunk to the switch. You now have a working, functioning Ingress customer